Well, folks, Republicans in North Carolina could be in major trouble. Recent polling has shown that incumbent Senator Thom Tillis, who's running about 4 points behind the former Governor Roy Cooper in a head-to-head matchup in the 2026 election. But those numbers may be just a little deceiving. So let's break it down for you. But before we get into it, to support our channel, if you could drop down below, hit that subscribe button, make sure you never miss another video from us again in the future. Now, Thom Tillis, who is the current incumbent incumbent senator from North Carolina. He now has held this seat since 2014 and was reelected in 2020. And the reality for Thom Tillis is he is no strangers to close elections. Both races he ran in were very, very close races. This race won by less than 50,000 votes in 2014 when he was initially elected, which, as we know, that was a great year for Republicans countrywide. It was Barack Obama's second midterm. Great year for Republicans in Congress, in the Senate. He was able to win this seat, which was initially held by Kay Hagan, who was the incumbent in that race. And then Thom Tillis won again in 2020, which was a tougher year for Republicans. President Biden won the election, but President Trump did still carry the state of North Carolina, and Thom Tillis was reelected by about 100,000 votes. So a larger margin than he was initially elected by. But current polling right now out of public policy polling is showing he's running about 4 points behind the former governor, who is, shall I say, very, very popular in the state of North Carolina. Now, looking at the actual race here, let's look at the GOP primary. Thom Tillis, and let's preface this, Thom Tillis in this poll had a 25% approval rating. President Trump had a 48% approval rating. You're running, what, 23 points behind Trump? How are you running, what did you do that is so unpopular that you're running that many points behind President Trump in your home state here? Now, let's look at the Republican primary, which is going to show that he is unpopular. Laura Trump, who's the former chair of the Republican National Committee, or co-chair, daughter-in-law of President Trump, and whose name was also thrown out there, who she may have replaced Marco Rubio when he became Secretary of State. I know Trump, behind closed doors, was really lobbying for his daughter to be the next senator from Florida. And it's, North Carolina is the home state of Laura Trump. This is where she grew up. This is where she went to school. And you can see it right here. She is potentially going to jump in this race. Another Republican, Andy Nilsen, who is a teacher's assistant, has already declared, really a no-name, but has declared that he's going to be running in this race. Laura Trump, if she decided to get into this race, could be huge. Now, ultimately, she would have to move back to North Carolina. There'd be a lot of logistical things, but her name has been thrown out there, and it's something that we should watch, especially with a very unpopular unpopular senator in Tillis. Now, when you look at, and should I say, Tillis has been endorsed by a lot of U.S. senators. Like, you could go down the whole list here. John Brascio, Marsha Blackburn, John Boozman, Ted Budd, Shelley Moore Capito, Bill Cassidy, you can go down the whole list. Joni Ernst, Chuck Grassley, Lisa Murkowski. But let's look at the Democrat side. Who's going to be running? Obviously, we have three names between people who have expressed interest or potential to run for this race here. Roy Cooper, who is the former governor of North Carolina, was initially elected back in 2016. At the same time, in the same race, President Trump won in North Carolina in 2016. Roy Cooper was elected governor, a Democrat governor, in 2016. Once again, reelected in 2020 at the same time President Trump won the state. He has publicly expressed that he would like to run for this seat here to be the next senator from North Carolina. Wiley Nickel, who is a former U.S. representative from North Carolina's 13th Congressional District, looks like he only served one term. And I'm just trying to see who, I wonder, did he lose? Okay, so yep, the Republican had beat him out. So it must have been a swing district. Won back in the midterms in 22 and then did not win re-election in North Carolina. And then Jeff Jackson, who is the North Carolina Attorney General, just elected about 4 months ago. And he was a former U.S. representative from North Carolina's 14th Congressional District. I believe he retired or stepped back to run for the Attorney General's seat. Obviously, we know Roy Cooper is going to be probably one of the strongest candidates in this race. You look at what happened in 2024. President Trump carried the state of North Carolina by, it's not going to. Let's see. Where? Okay, here we go. Carried the state by about 3 points, about a little shy of 200,000, about 185,000 votes. He carried the state by at the same time that Josh Stein won the North Carolina's governor's election by 15 points. Now, granted, we're going to put it out there that Mark Robinson had issues. He had some issues. And you really have to look at the political climate, the environment that you have in North Carolina. Like we said, North Carolina is a swing state. President Trump won it in 2024. He improved on his margins since 2020, while at the same time that Democrat, Josh Stein, became the next governor, won by 15 points there. And obviously we know the scandals from Mark Robinson played a major role in the GOP loss in 2024 at the governor's election. And like we said, recent polls are showing Tillis running behind former governor Roy Cooper by 4 points and only having a 25% approval rating, which is insane. And there's another poll out there that's showing that between Laura Trump and Thom Tillis, that Laura Trump is like just beating the crap out of him. It's insane. In a primary matchup between Laura Trump and Thom Tillis, she was leading by like 40 points in a recent poll. I think it was done back in December. I wonder, let's see. Can I get the hypothetical poll in? Okay. Oh, here we go. Okay. More like 50 points. Back in November, Thom Tillis, Victory Insights. You're looking at 11%. Wow. Undecided. 64% would vote for Laura Trump. Wow. Talk about an unpopular senator. Very unpopular. And we all know this comes on the heels of Thom Tillis being censured in 2023 over his support for the Respect for Marriage Act that codified gay marriage into federal law, and also over his attempts to build a bipartisan immigration bill that would have given a pathway, amnesty, to millions and millions of illegal immigrants that have come into the country during the Biden administration, which is very unpopular. Very unpopular. You know, Trump said it in his speech to Congress a couple nights ago. We didn't need legislation. We needed a new president. That was the simple reality. We didn't need to pass an immigration bill that would have, quote, fixed all the issues, because it didn't fix them. You know what it was? It was to give amnesty to millions and millions of undocumented immigrants who came into the country during Biden. Biden basically said, we're not going to follow federal law. We're just going to allow people to come in. We're just going to allow them to come in, and, you know, it just is what it is. The millions and millions, if not there's over tens of millions of illegal migrants that have come into the country, because I'm sure there's plenty that have come in undetected. And because he tried to go ahead and build this bipartisan bill, I believe he tried to do it with Kristen Sinema from Arizona, and I believe she was a Democrat at the time before, you know, she became an independent and yada, yada, yada. But he tried to build this bipartisan bill that would have given a pathway to citizenship for illegal migrants, and the North Carolina Republican Party censured him. Now, although the censure really there isn't anything that it actually does. It just shows that people who elected him are not happy with what he is doing in D.C. And it was like, you know, I believe it's like there was like over 1,000 people that got to vote in this censure. And I believe like 80 or 70% of the people voted to censure him for his moves. And, you know, you want to talk about the Respect for Marriage Act, you know, we're not going to get into it in this video. We can do another video on that. If you want to hear a video about that and my thoughts on it, drop something down below and I'll try and put something together for you guys. But the reality is from the eye of marriage is not something that really should have it shouldn't be a big issue for the government. This is a religious thing. But if we're talking about subsidizing relationships that are more beneficial for society versus others, I think that's a conversation you need to have. Because in a marriage between two people of the same sex, they cannot procreate. It's my view that the federal government should be subsidizing people who are procreating. We have an issue with not enough children being born. Our birth rate is declining rapidly. If we don't want certain pieces of our society to erode, we need to have more children. It's just as simple as that. We need to have more children. And when I say erode, I mean like Social Security. If you don't have enough people paying into Social Security, it's going to collapse because it's a Ponzi scheme. And Chuck Schumer and Bernie Sanders can get mad about that, but that's what it is. Social Security is a Ponzi scheme. It helps out millions and millions of people. There is no doubt about that. They could have set it up better, and by definition, the way it is structured, it's a Ponzi scheme. It doesn't mean it's not helping a lot of people out. It's a Ponzi scheme. And like we said, this censure doesn't really do anything, but it does show that people, they're not happy with him. And Tillis is already facing an uphill challenge, both in the primary and in the general election. So he's just kind of piling SHIT on at this point. And if Laura Trump decides to run, it could be a very, very messy primary that would leave whoever won it most likely bruised pretty badly in the primary process. Now, on the other side for Tillis, he has, a more positive note, I guess you could say. He has a much broader appeal than Laura Trump at this moment, especially when it comes to Democrats and independents, which in a tight election like this will matter just that much more. If he even has 5 or 10% more appeal to Democrats and independents and can win some of those people over, you really need to consider. It's like a lot, you consider that in a lot of states, even like Minnesota or in Maine, if a true MAGA America First Republican were to run in Maine, they probably wouldn't win. But because you have someone who they're only, instead of siding with the GOP 95% of the time, they're only going to side with the GOP, 75% of the time, someone like Susan Collins, we're still able to win that seat. And for 75% of the issues, we're able to have a majority on it, a bigger majority. The same thing with Minnesota. You can run an alt-right MAGA Republican there, like a Royce White, who we saw what happened there and just got smoked. He ran like 12 points behind President Trump in that same election, lost to Amy Klobuchar by 16 or 17 points. Or you could try and nominate someone who isn't as MAGA, isn't as America First. They're still a Republican. They still hold conservative values, but they're going to break with the Republican Party 15, 20, 25% of the time. So what would you rather have? Would you rather have a senator who is going to vote with you 75 or 80% of the time, or a senator who's going to vote with you like 2% of the time? That's kind of the choice that you have. And now it's not saying that's exactly how it's going to be for this election with Laura Trump. I'm just saying if Tillis can have broader appeal with independents and Democrats than Laura Trump, which I think she would be very popular in North Carolina. But, carpetbaggers, we don't always know how that's going to turn out. And we know that Tillis can win in tight elections. You look at 2020. He was running behind his opponent in that race there. Cal Cunningham was in many major polls, was running behind him by 5 to 10 points. And then you get to election day. It's still a close race, but he beat him by almost 2 points. Considering all the polling said he was going to lose by 5 to 10, it's like I think you got to give Tillis some credit there for what he's done. And if you jump over, like we said, to the other side of the aisle, a campaign for Roy Cooper is not just going to be a walk in the park, even if Tillis or Laura Trump is the nominee. It's not just going to be some walk in the park. He will have more moderate stances that he supports. They're going to be challenged heavily by the progressive left-wing radical lunatics of the party. That's going to be something that he's going to have to deal with as well. So don't just think that, all of a sudden Roy Cooper is now the nominee for the Democrats and now it's just going to be a cakewalk. No. It may help the Democrats out a little bit, but when we're talking on the margins, it's like you kind of have to look at it with a magnifying glass. We're looking at this on the margins. We know the state is there's probably 10% of the electorate, maybe 20% that you can actually convince to change their vote. The other 80% is they are where they are regardless of who runs. And this race is expected to be a very, very expensive race for both parties. Investing heavily. They're going to invest, both the Democrats and Republicans are going to invest heavily in the state as Republicans see defending the seat as a top priority. You're looking at the 2026. Let's look at, You're looking at the Senate map here. We can go through and fill out all these where the Democrat strongholds are going to be at. Who am I forgetting here? Okay, 40. Minnesota probably. And you look at the Republicans. It's like, even without the toss-up states, it's like, you can look at this and you can feel pretty good about where we're at right now. 51 to 45 without any toss-ups. The Republicans are trying to increase their majority because right now, how it's split up, this is how the Senate map looks as of right now. But these are your toss-ups that you're looking at, and with the Republicans, if they want to get to 55 seats, not only do they need to flip Michigan and Georgia, which are their top two priorities, but they need to hold North Carolina and Maine. That's just the simple reality. Get into a 55-seat majority heavily depends on the Republicans holding North Carolina and Maine. It's the only shot they have. It's the only shot the Republicans have to get to 55 seats here. I don't see them. It's like, where else could the Democrats or the Republicans go on the offensive? Okay, maybe you could think about New Hampshire. Maybe you could think about Virginia, if you have Glenn Youngkin there. When Warner was initially elected in Virginia, it's like he was only elected by like 1.5 points. So with the right Republican and the right environment for the country, Republicans could flip that seat, but ultimately I'm not betting money on it. But if the Republicans want to get there, this is what they got to do. This is where they got to hold North Carolina. And Democrats see North Carolina and Maine just as the Republicans. These are their top states they need to defend. These are the top states that Democrats are going to spend money in. Because if they even want to have a shot to close the gap in the Senate, because ultimately the Democrats, where is the path for the Democrats? Even if they hold Michigan, Georgia, flip North Carolina, flip Maine, it's still a 51-49 plus J.D. Vance. You've got an extra vote there. And we're going to have a different senator from Kentucky who's most likely going to be more America first and not going to vote against a lot of these things like Mitch McConnell has. So, the Democrats really don't have a shot to flip this race. Like, where could the Democrats go for it to be a 50-50 race? I think because of ranked choice voting in Alaska, they may have a shot. Or, God, I really hate to even say this, but Ohio, if they run someone against John Husted like a Sherrod Brown or a Tim Ryan, I could see that happening in a wild world. The environment is very, very bad for the Democrats or for the Republicans. I could see that happening, but I don't think it's realistic. This is the ceiling for the Democrats right here. And the only way they can even get close to the ceiling is by flipping North Carolina. So the 2026 Senate race in North Carolina could have huge implications when it comes to the majority in the Senate. Because if it turns out to be a good year, a lot could be determined, which, like we said, a lot on if it's going to be a good year or not is going to be determined on how Trump's policies affect everyday people's lives over the next 2 years. And to my viewers out there, do you think the GOP should stick with Thom Tillis or should they give Trump a shot? Let me know what your thoughts are down in the comments right now, and let me know. Is there somebody else you'd like to see jump in this race? Do you think Thom Tillis should be able to run for re-election here? Do you think he's got a shot to win against Roy Cooper? Let me know what your thoughts are down in the comments, and as always, subscribe so you never miss another video from us in the future.